Welcome back to 31 Days of Horror. Today's review is The Ring. Obviously, this is an American remake of the Japanese horror film Ringu, or Ringu? Ringu sounds like the penguin, so I don't really know. Um, Obviously, this kind of started the big trend with Hollywood remaking Japanese horror films because they sold a lot of tickets. They're very popular. It's kind of led the forefront in that trend, which still every so often you'll see those types of movies. But it was like really popular early 2000. You'd see those kinds of movies early 2000s. Starring Naomi Watts, of course, fresh off her career exploding performance in Mulholland Drive, and this movie kind of further established her as one of the big name actresses working in Hollywood, and directed by Gore Verbinski, who's a very daring experimental director, going from genre to genre. Like before this movie, I mean, really, he was known for Mouse Hunt, if you remember that movie. That was a good movie, by the way, and The Mexican. With Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts. So it was interesting to see, hey, this guy who directed fucking Mouse Hunt is doing this horror movie. This is kind of cool. Needless to say, no more than a year later, became one of the most successful directors ever directing Pirates of the Caribbean, whatever, you know what I mean. One of the most successful franchises ever, really. So I mean, definitely that guy has his place in Hollywood. But this was his horror movie. This was him trying horror, and this is kind of a fascinating movie because, in its own way, it does signify sort of like the end of the VHS tape and its kind of acceptability as a home viewing experience for movies. Like even at the time this was released, VHS was kind of outdated. This is 2002. Like that's kind of when VHS started dying. So, all the shelves and shelves of horror movies were dying along with it. Horror movies that are lost forever, possibly. That maybe you'll see on some YouTube channels. Some really cool collections of obscure and lost horror movies that weren't thought to see fit for DVD, apparently. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, basically, plot of this movie, I'm sure you know it. I'm sure you've seen this movie. There's a killer tape. You watch it, and then 7 days later you die, and it kind of begins sort of like with this cold open of, the two teenage girls who are not really relevant to the main plot. They're, kind of the starting plot points. They're sitting in their room, doing whatever teenage girls do. Meanwhile, they look like they're, 25 years old, but whatever. You're like, oh, I watched that tape. What? I watched it with my boyfriend at the cabin, and you think they're joking, but then, something comes, something kills them. You see the girl in the closet all like decrepit and looks like the life is sucked out of her, and it's really creepy. And then it's her aunt, who is the Naomi Watts character, who's a news reporter. She's investigating what happened, what's going on here. So that's the plot of the movie, and it's about her and her ex-husband and her kid, kind of all caught up in this mystery. So I mean, by concept alone, I mean, it is kind of it's creepy. It makes for a neat like a campfire story, or late at night in the tent with a flashlight kind of story. There's this tape. You watch it. It looks really creepy. It looks like someone's nightmare. The phone rings. You hear someone say, "In 7 days you'll die," and in 7 days you die. That's creepy. That's good. So I mean, definitely that kind of concept. Just perfect for a horror movie. And there are parts of this movie that are really creepy and scary and well done. Well done on Gore Verbinski's part as a director. Employing a certain kind of style to it that makes it visually interesting and grim and creepy, I guess. It's just kind of the best way to put it. And Naomi Watts is an actress, really good in her role. A legitimate performance. So this isn't, like bad acting horror movie. This is a Hollywood horror movie. And there's a distinct difference, I would say, between, midnight monster movie and big budget Hollywood paranormal movie, which is kind of weird. Like, I'm getting off track here, but you'll see most of, like, say, well-known actors who end up doing horror movies tend to be like paranormal types of horror movies. I've found, name any haunting movie that you've seen recently. Like, what was it? The Conjuring. Patrick Wilson, Ethan Hawke, and whatever the fuck that movie was. You know what I mean? Is he talking about Oculus, or is he talking about uh, Insidious? No, what the fuck was the name of that movie? The one where like there's a. Never mind. Anyway, back to The Ring. Basically, I think the premise is really good, and I think there is a certain style to it that works really good. But the movie, it does ultimately reach a point where it totally loses me, because there are a lot of things I just do not like about this movie. I watched it again recently, and there are things that kind of annoy me to the movie. Like, obviously, I mean, with that type of style, that works. There are individual scares that don't work too well. The movie is trying really hard to be creepy, trying really hard to be scary and nerve wracking, and making you grossed out, making you creeped out, making you think like, holy shit. You know, not all of it works. There's a good amount of it that just is stupid. Like, you know, I thought the whole section with the horse going crazy, that was stupid. Naomi Watts is drinking a glass of water, and like, I guess it's, what is it, a stethoscope is inside her. She makes this goofy fucking face like, and pulls it out, and then water comes out of the phone, creek water, well water, I guess it is. That was really stupid. And, you know, she's investigating the tape to see, you know, what's really on this tape, and, you know, she sees the fly, and she can pull out the fly. You know, like, the scary music plays, she's like, oh my god, that's so creepy. No, it's stupid. But at the same time, there are good creepy moments to it. Needless to say, I mean, the things you'll remember about this movie. One, you'll remember that beginning scene with the girl in the closet, you know, all dead and stuff. You'll definitely remember Samara, the girl coming out of the TV and crawling, and that's good. All that's really good, and, you know, like the videotape of just her, like, with, you know, the hair all covering her face. There's memorable imagery in this movie, and I would assume a lot of it is taken directly from the Japanese version, which I haven't seen, by the way, but you know, whatever. Ultimately, what does make this movie suffer is its overplotting. It has to explain everything, and it's just so aggressive in doing so. It takes over the whole story. You think, you know, okay, kind of cool. She's investigating what's going on here, and that's interesting. You know, she watches the tape herself. She becomes cursed herself. She's in a panic to stop it, and to stop it from killing her son, which the son has watched himself. But it's like, okay, goes this whole thing. Let's go to the fucking horse farm. Let's investigate. Let's learn everything about this little girl, this little town. The father, it just overplots it, and needless misdirections in this movie where it's like, oh, Samara isn't evil, she's just misunderstood. Nope, she's evil, haha, tricked you. Like, I don't know, like, the last half of this movie is just a mess plot wise, and it's extremely disappointing when, you know, it has established a good tone and a creepy tone, but there's just so much fucking stupid shit to this movie that, I don't know. I think a lot of people do like this movie. A lot of people remember it fondly too. But I think the scariest parts, the creepiest parts, stand out so well that you tend to forget that there's some really stupid shit in this movie. And it takes itself extremely seriously to the point where you're like, I'm not as invested in this whole story as I originally thought I was. Like, I don't really care, you know, if she finds out about this girl Samara or not. Like, what do I care? What is my investment in this? So I think when they over-explain, you know, the creepy backstory, that becomes problematic, and it ceases to be scary. Because, I mean, simplicity, I mean, can be very scary. Obviously, we've seen horror movies that have a broader type of plot to them, that have more complicated explanations. But, you know, part of it is true. Like, remember that scene in, like, Scream where, you know, the killer is like, these days you don't need to have a motive. They really explain why Norman Bates killed people. They ever really explain why Hannibal Lecter liked to eat flesh? Like, don't think so. They would try to later in Hannibal Rising, but look how that turned out. So there's, you know, there's a truth to that, I think. So they just over-explain everything in this movie, and it becomes not interesting, I think. I'm just not interested in that story. I'm very interested in the story about this tape that this reporter has watched due to her own interest in becoming cursed, but the payoff to it is just not good at all. And again, it tries really, really, really hard to make scary and over the top, frightening sequences, and a lot of it just doesn't work. Like, especially with the kid, the fucking kid in this movie. Oh my god, I went through this last year, but there's just something that really bugs me about kid actors. What was it? I think Cecil B. DeMille said, "Don't work with animals. Don't work with children." I can see why. It's as if, Juilliard opened a school of creepy child actors after this Sixth Sense came out because that was so popular. So you see that in almost every horror movie. The creepy kid who's saying creepy things and is tortured. Like, whatever. I don't find it creepy. I think it's fucking stupid. But anyway, for what it's worth, there are memorable scenes in this movie. There are creepy scenes in this movie. I think Gore Verbinski is an extremely talented director. I think Naomi Watts is an extremely talented actress. I think their efforts are put to decent use here, but I think the problem is in the writing. I'm not sure who wrote this. Aaron Kruger. So I don't know. I think if they kept it a little simpler, it would have been better. But then again, what do I know? Maybe they exactly replicated the Japanese film's plot, in which case, it's a fair enough adaptation. So visually, it's good. Tonally, it's good. The scares hit or miss, and the plot just falls fucking apart until I cannot grasp at any kind of care about any of it. So it's a mixed bag. I'd like to give it like a 5, if that's fair enough. So that's my review of The Ring. Popular movie at the time. I think it's held up fine for what it is. I know there are people who still feel it is among the best recent horror movies. I wouldn't go that far, but I mean it's entertaining enough. So it's not an absolutely horrible, unwatchable movie. So there's that, and there's just something about a haunted VHS that I find appealing. You won't see many movies about haunted DVDs or haunted streams. How about that? A haunted Netflix stream. Hey, that's a good idea for a movie. Oh, there's this title you can search on Netflix. Never mind. Copyright there. Anyway, that's my review. Of course, there are a lot more to come. 31 Days of Horror, doing horror reviews every day this month in October. So stay tuned for more, and thank you very much for watching.